All right, let's dive into one of the oldest and, frankly, darkest stories humanity has ever told. It's a story all about jealousy, a shocking murder, and then a twist of mercy you might not see coming. And it all kicks off with two brothers. This is the question, isn't it? It's the whole reason we're digging into this today. It's a question that's been haunting us since the dawn of time, and it still feels incredibly relevant. So, to even begin to find an answer, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning. So let's meet our two main characters, Cain and Abel. Now, these are the very first children born into the world, the first to grow up outside the Garden of Eden. And right from the get-go, you can see they're on two totally different tracks. Okay, so on one side, you've got Cain. He's the firstborn, the farmer, the one who works the soil. His name is pretty telling. It reflects his mother Eve's hope, something like, "I've brought a man into the world with God's help." Then you've got Abel, the younger brother. He's a shepherd, a keeper of the flocks. So you have these two brothers with two very different ways of life, and that difference is going to set the stage for everything. The real trouble starts, as it so often does, during an act of worship. Both brothers decide to bring an offering to God. But here's the crucial thing. This story isn't really about the gifts themselves. It's all about what's going on inside the heart of the person giving the gift. So the big question is, why did God reject Cain's offering? Well, the text gives us some really important clues. Abel, it says, brought the firstborn of his flock. He brought his absolute best. Cain, on the other hand, just brought some fruit of the ground. See the difference? It's not that vegetables are bad. It's about the attitude. And look at this last point, because it's everything. God accepted Abel and his offering, but rejected Cain and his offering. God looked at the person first. It seems Cain's heart just wasn't in the right place. Maybe it was jealousy, maybe he just felt obligated, but it definitely wasn't genuine gratitude. And Cain's reaction? It tells you everything you need to know. He doesn't stop and ask, "Hey, what did I do wrong?" He doesn't try to learn from it. Nope. He's just consumed by this white-hot anger. His face falls. You can literally picture the resentment just twisting up his features. But wait, because this isn't over. In this really incredible moment, God actually steps in. He sees Cain's rage building up, and he gives him a direct warning. He basically offers him a chance to stop, take a breath, and choose a totally different path. This line right here, wow, it's one of the most powerful images in the whole story. God tells Cain that sin is like a predator, like a wild animal just crouching outside his door, waiting to pounce. It wants to control him. But then comes the most important part. You must rule over it. Cain is being told, point blank, you have a choice. You have the power and the responsibility to master this thing. So you see, God didn't just write Cain off. He warned him, he showed him a way out, he empowered him to win this fight. But tragically, Cain, just eaten up by his own pride and anger, doesn't ask for help. He decides he's going to face this crouching beast all by himself. And this is where it all goes horribly wrong. Cain completely ignores that warning, and all that jealousy and rage finally boils over into an act that will literally change the course of human history. And look how calculated this was. This wasn't some sudden crime of passion. Cain lures his brother out into a field, somewhere they can be alone. Then he attacks him and kills him. And what happens next? Just like in the garden with Adam and Eve, God shows up, and he doesn't start with an accusation. He starts with a question. The question seems so simple, but it's incredibly deep. Where is your brother Abel? Now, obviously, God already knows the answer. This isn't about getting information. This is Cain's last chance. It's an open door for him to confess, to face what he's done. And Cain's response, well, it's become infamous for a reason. First, he lies. I don't know. And then he throws back this sarcastic, defiant question, am I my brother's keeper? It is just a chilling, absolute rejection of any responsibility for anyone but himself. God's reply is just as powerful. He cuts right through the lie with this haunting, poetic image. He says the injustice is so profound that Abel's very blood is crying out from the ground for justice. You might be able to hide a crime from other people, but you can't hide it from the universe. So the judgment comes down. Cain, the farmer, is now cursed by the very ground he used to work. It won't grow things for him anymore. And he's sentenced to be a restless wanderer. Think about what that means. It's a complete severing of all his connections. He loses his job, his home, his family, and ultimately his connection to God's presence. He's totally alone. But, even in the middle of all this darkness and judgment, the story takes a really surprising turn. Because out of this one horrific act, we're going to see two completely different paths for humanity emerge. And we see an act of mercy that is just stunning. So Cain cries out, saying his punishment is too much to bear, that anyone who finds him will just kill him. And God does something, well, astonishing. He puts a mark on Cain. Now, a lot of people think this is a mark of shame, but that's not what the text says at all. It was a mark of protection. God basically says that if anyone kills Cain, they'll face vengeance 7 times over. It's this incredible moment of mercy, breaking the cycle of revenge before it even starts. So, what does Cain do with this second chance? He's been cursed to be a wanderer, but he basically says no thanks. He defies his sentence, settles down, and builds a city. You can see this as humanity's first attempt to build its own security, its own little kingdom, separate from God. And on the surface, Cain's descendants do amazing things. They develop culture, they innovate technology, they become experts with livestock, they invent musical instruments, they figure out how to work with metal. Civilization is booming. But at the same time, sin doesn't just stick around. It gets worse. It escalates. His descendant Lamech takes 2 wives, breaking the original pattern for marriage. And he represents this new arrogant kind of violence. And this boast from Lamech is just terrifying. He's bragging to his wives that he killed a young man just for hurting him. And then he takes God's merciful promise of protection for Cain and twists it into a personal threat. He's saying, if God avenged Cain 7 times, I'll be avenged 77 times. This is what you get with a civilization built on human pride. Amazing culture, but with violence that just spirals out of control. But that is not the only option. The story doesn't just end in despair. God provides another way, a little seed of hope. Adam and Eve have another son, and they name him Seth, which means appointed, because he's been appointed by God to take the place of Abel. And this table just lays out the 2 paths so clearly. On one hand, you've got the legacy of Cain. It's all about self-preservation, building cities, making cool stuff. But it's also marked by pride and ever-increasing violence, all while living away from the Lord's presence. But then you have Seth's legacy. It starts as a gift from God. His son's name, Enos, even means frail man, which points to humility. And what's their great achievement? They don't build a city. Instead, they began to call on the name of the Lord. They chose relationship over rebellion. And that really brings us right back to today, doesn't it? This ancient story lays out 2 fundamental ways to be human. One way is to build our own security, rely on our own strength and tech, which can lead to incredible things, but also, as we saw, to some pretty dark places. The other path is to recognize our own limits, our own frailty, and to call on something bigger than ourselves. So as we look at our own world, our own lives, you have to ask, which of these 2 legacies are we building?